Yeah, if there's something you don't want me, if you want me to take it out or something, I can. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So can you tell me what was your childhood like?
My childhood was a mixed bag. I was adopted, fostered and adopted when I suppose I was about 5 months old.
Oh,
So I
okay.
was, and I was my I subsequently met my mum and had about 20, just over 20 years sort of relationship with her,
Oh, you mean
which
your
was
biological mom?
my biological mum. Yes, I met. But my other family, my mum and dad were divorced when I was about 13, 14. So I stayed with my mum. I was the only one really left of my brother and sister, and they were of my mum and dad's children. They were my adopted mum and dad's children. So I
Oh,
was taken from London. I was born in London in hospital there, and then taken to Liverpool and brought up in a family of two, a brother and a sister, and mum and dad. And it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was easy. It wasn't an easy thing for me. I didn't really. I tried to fit in. I was quite an affable sort of, probably quite laconic, really. I quite sort of laid back, and I think I didn't. We just missed really. We didn't really hit it off, and
oh,
it wasn't the best, shall we say? Um, and I'm still sort of, and I've gone into different types of therapy in order to try and deal with, the sense of identity as a child,
yeah.
not fitting in, and also my upbringing as well, which was I found very, very difficult. Um,
Do you
I
still
mean, the
have a
work,
relationship with your adopted parents right now?
yes, I do. I don't really get on that great with my mum,
Yeah.
but I do sort of, I have some love for her, and I do try and, she's very old now and very um and got really bad arthritis, so she's not in a great way, but she lives about 2 hours away from us. So I will go and see her in August, but I'm quite, guarded with her. Not I don't give up much information to her. My
Yeah.
dad, on the other hand, I get on really well with. Well, I think I do. I really love him. He's great. He's a lovely man. He sort of left and met my stepmom prior
Okay.
to, so it was a big split in our family, and the divorce happened, the separation over Christmas. So it was one of the worst. So Christmases from then on in that family were not great, as you can imagine. So then but actually, and it was very traumatic, and it was really disruptive, and it was hard. And I was sort of the carer for my mum, who went completely, sort of really hit her hard. So um, she became really sort of mentally quite unwell. And so I had to really like take care of her. So I was a bit of a child care as well for about 3 or 4 years. And so that was difficult because I was at school doing my exams, and I was very, very tired because I was staying up with her to try and get her to go to sleep. And she was sort of really quite in a bad place. So, but I think my dad he did make the right decision, because I don't think they were actually compatible in the end. And I think, well, however much my mum wanted it to believe that it was something that should last forever, it was never going to. And I think so. They made, yeah. He remarried my stepmom, who was lovely, who sadly died of a brain tumor about, I don't know, in 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um, Yeah, but she was lovely, and she was full of life. And that Dad and Lynn got on really, Colin and Lynn got on really, really well. And I think they were a great team. And so yeah, I think he really misses it, but I think it was the right choice for him to do, as traumatic for the rest of our family as it was, and as disruptive as it was, and as difficult as it was for us to deal with. And I think especially me, because I was sort of left with my mum at home, who was not in a great place. So it was difficult. But the positives out of that were, well, both remarried, and my mum met a very kind man called Alan, and she seemed to get on really well with him. And so they married. So both have remarried and both have had, I think, fairly successful marriages since then. So that's good, a good thing, you know.
And then how did you meet your biological mom again?
Well, I sort of was keen to, because I think as an adopted child, you well, not, this would be different for lots of different people.
Yeah.
Adoptees it's a whole different thing. Everybody has a different story and different opinion about it and different feelings about it. But for me, it was I really wanted to. I felt that I needed to find out more. I felt that I need to in order to try and find some sort of form of identity. I felt I didn't have an identity. It's funny enough because I think that's why I probably went into acting, because it was a, you could find lots of different characters. It wasn't that I was running away from myself, and I said, well, maybe I was, I don't know, but I think it was because it was safe. It felt safe to go into a character, to delve down into to playing these people,
Mm.
and it you know, I could find out who they were in a way that I was probably trying to find out who I was. And I think so trying to find my mum was a sort of extension of that, wanting to try and finish some sort of circle, trying to find a I don't, not conclusion, just a bit of peace about who I was and how I felt.
Mm.
And I thought also it might open up some doors about who I was, why I was a certain way, and why I felt so different to my adoptive family.
Yeah.
And and my dad was great. He helped me with it, and we, between the two of us, we found my mum quite quickly, actually, because I had lots of adopted papers and information, so
Oh, good.
I could
Okay.
I could contact her quite quickly, and eventually we did. And I spoke to her on the phone, then we met, and I went to meet her and went to her flat and took photos of my family, and you know, and she showed me photos of mine and all the interesting stuff about my family which I hadn't known. And also, my father was she met my father when she was in Libya, in working for Esso. So my father, well, not in Libya. He came over once she'd worked there. She came back to London, and they was introduced to my father, who is a Tripolian. So so I'm half Libyan. That's the other thing. So
Oh,
it was a really interesting, you know. So that was interesting, and there were just lots of questions about, you know, why I'd gone into acting. But I found out there was a big sort of vaudevillian like star in our family called Willie Edwin, who was an actor manager, had been on Broadway with Lydia Thompson, who was quite
okay.
a famous Broadway actress at the time, doing sort of vaudeville and musical. Well, musical is the equivalent of American equivalent of musical in England. And he put on shows there. Yeah, and he went to Adelaide. He travelled around with his family. He was a really interesting man. Put on plays in the West End, ran several theatres as an actor manager, and was buried in Kensal Green Cemetery, which Claire and I went to try and find, but we couldn't. We spent a really cold afternoon trying to find his grave, could not find it. Eventually came home. Eventually, it was a bit of a, you know, a waste of time. But at least we sort of, I felt like we did pay some sort of tribute to him, because we had some, I think we were going to put something on his grave and everything, but we just couldn't find anything at all, headstone, nothing. We must have been looking in the wrong place.
Oh,
But it's a
sure.
very long, big and rambling graveyard, Kensal Green, and the
Mm.
old maps which show where he was didn't seem to line up. But anyway, I digress. But he was. It was interesting to know that I had it. It was in the blood. It was really sort of, because I wondered why I did it, and I thought, well, it's probably to find some sort of identity. But it's really in me, the acting thing. It's been, you know, it's part of my makeup. And
Yeah.
singing as well. I was a singer as a cathedral chorister and a cathedral lay clerk. Uh, Growing up, I had a really good voice, and my family, there's a countertenor, and I was a countertenor, and there was a lot of singing and acting in my biological family. So that was really interesting. Yeah, so that's sort of in a long-winded way why I tried to find my mum, my biological mum.
Do you have like a memory that you're fond of as a kid? Is there something you remember and it's a fond memory as opposed to something that's hard?
Yeah, yes, I'm sure.
Which I know
I
is
love
hard if it's very hard childhood.
Yeah, it was nice. I used to like the freedom of going because in the 70s you were just sort of let out. Basically, you were kicked out of the house in the morning, and then you came back at night for your tea, sort of thing. So it was, but I loved the freedom of that, and I loved sort of going down to the beach and playing in the rocks there. And I had a great friend, Eddie Nicol, and the two of us used to get up to all sorts. We did lots of adventures. Lots of we just we had a good time, just sort of out playing a lot and running around the local area. And we ran everywhere. And I don't think we sort of walked anywhere. We just ran everywhere. I think, how do I do that now? I'm like 56 this year, and I was thinking, how did I run everywhere? I'm so tired all the time. But so yeah, and I think the choir was when I sang in a church choir from the age of 6, so that was really good. I felt very happy there, and
Oh,
I loved singing, really loved singing, and I loved the sort of the feeling of being in a choir and making a lovely sound. I love football growing up. My dad and I and my brother used to go to watch Liverpool play at Anfield
oh,
on a
okay.
regular basis, and they were always good days. And we'd come back, and my mum might make us homemade burgers, and that was great. So I loved that. So there are lots of fond memories amongst all of that. But yeah, it's hard to sort of. I suppose that's a good question because it is good to think of it positively as well as the negative stuff, because I suppose you concentrate on the negative stuff in order to try and find some sort of um, peace with it, or solution, not solution, but some way of dealing with it, so you're happy with it. So I suppose you concentrate on that negative bit, but there were nice things to it. And camping, I suppose we went as a family. I just seem to be remember being shouted at there a lot. And yeah, told that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't trying hard enough, or I was a bit of a failure. I was a failure, definitely told that. So there were lots of negative things, but there were, yeah. I think it was mostly when I was by myself, really, though. That happiness of playing by myself. And
Yeah.
I think that affected me in terms of observation. I used to observe a lot of people.
Mm.
I was quite quiet as a kid. I used to observe a lot of things, which is probably good for my acting in the end, because you're watching how people walk and move and what they say. I think you're worried about, you're sort of a bit more hyper aware of things, because you're worried that if you say or do anything, you might be in trouble, you might get smacked, you might get. So I think that that's why I was quite aware of things, and observing, I think, more than anything as a kid. But the times when I was by myself, I think I probably enjoyed them because I felt safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you, if you wrote an autobiography about your life, what do you think you'd call it?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. Something like rising to the top, and I don't mean as in top of anything, being amazing at something. I just mean coming up from, when something sort of like settles on the bottom, but then you shake it up and it sort of comes up to the top of the surface,
Yeah. Hmm.
sort of goes towards the light, something in the yeah, maybe towards the light, I don't know, something that, yeah, because I've done a lot of work on myself. I've done a lot of therapy, a lot of different things to try and I feel I'm in a lot happier place now.
Yeah.
It's
Mm.
still an ongoing thing,
Yeah.
but maybe rising to the top or towards the light or something like that. I don't know. They sound very cliche, don't they? I don't know.
Actually, no, because most people would write it with that title meaning to rise to some sort of career level. So
Yeah.
I think if you did have subtitles to explain, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. It's a deeper meaning than it would be if you just meant I just want to be famous or make it to a
Yeah.
certain.
I've never wanted to be famous ever. No,
Yeah.
no, it's not really my scene. I like doing things well, but I like to be good at stuff when I do it, but
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the rest of it. But I mean, I love, like, blogs and things like that, and listening to different people's opinions and stories and things. That's great. But I think the use of stuff to make people, I don't know whether it's necessarily that great a thing for human beings, for people, is fame. It's probably very difficult. I'd have to ask very famous people what they how if they were truthful about it, whether what it's really like. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Um, what do you think in your lifetime, like right now, I guess, in the season of life you're in, what do you think makes life hard for you in this season of life?
Um, I think trying to get a balance between working and life so that
Okay.
I don't wear myself out, because I do a very laborious job, mostly I'm painting and decorating. The last acting I was in the West End about 3 years ago. And I did a year in Company, which is now on Broadway. The production that's on Broadway at the moment was the production I was in with Marianne Elliott. That was for about a year, 18 months. And then I followed it with Noises Off and in a farce, which was in the West End for 6 months. And then it's been really quiet. So it's been mostly decorating, painting,
Mm,
decorating. So that time. So it's if I think it's hard to firstly to get a life so you're not worn out by it, but also so to make enough money to survive. Claire does a huge amount of other things as well as lots of house stuff, but also she's training and doing. So I think it's getting the balance of that, but it's also getting feeling like I'm still doing things that are creative.
yeah.
Uh,
Agree.
I think that's as a creative person, it's very important to keep creative because otherwise, I think you're not in touch with your real self. I think so. I've started writing songs, which has been really good.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I've decided to write myself an album, and it's only for me and for my family or for friends. But it's just that whatever song comes up, I sort of write it down. So I've written 4 or 5 songs now, and I'm really enjoying that process of um seeing what comes up, what words there are, and what the songs are, what the tunes are. That's been really a surprise for me because I've always written poetry, but I've never.
Oh
But
wow.
songwriting was something I thought, oh yeah, oh, this is really good fun. I'm enjoying it. So I've
Are
got
you
my.
you're not gonna record it?
I'm going to record it at some point.
Oh,
Yeah.
but just nobody can listen but your family.
Yeah, if I might send you one if I might send you a song if just so that you hear
I'd love to, yeah. That's really
it
cool.
there's one called Twisting Road which I'm going to record, which I'm really happy with, and a friend of mine, Howard, he's got a little studio around the corner, so we're going to put mandolin and double bass and something else on it, and then it's funny because I've got really um the Lives of Others is it Lives of Others I've just got really into country music, really like there's some really wonderful American country music which are just,
It is, yeah.
that's been quite an influence actually, which I didn't surprise I was surprised me because I always loved heavy rock when I was growing up, Motorhead and AC/DC, stuff like that, but I've had a wide eclectic mix. I love early sacred English
Mm,
and Spanish music, so Renaissance, medieval through to Renaissance, particularly the Renaissance music. I love, absolutely love. I love singing. And then Led Zeppelin, and then all sorts of stuff, and then musicals, and
yeah.
what was my question? Oh, yeah. So I suppose that, yeah, the music has been really good. That's been good to rebalance. Um, but I think, yeah, what's difficult, the difficult thing, which was the original was your question. Yeah, is finding that balance as well as the knowing that, you know, I'm in the latter part of my life, the second part, the sort of the last bit. So from 56 onwards, really, I'm soon towards 60 and then into the 60s and 70s, and then you're in, and that bit is like gulp. So I suppose also, I think what's difficult is I better start really thinking about death, because I think death is something that we stick our head in the sand and don't deal with as human beings. And it's a big one, really. And I think it might also help me to live better if I can. I like the way the Mexicans deal with death. They really celebrate it and talk about it. And it's not
Yeah.
a it's not a it's not an alien thing to them. It's part of life. I think in Britain we very much stiff upper lip. We don't mention death. Whatever you do, don't mention it. So that's something else. Yeah. Has that sort of answered your question? I don't know whether there's anything.
Yeah, no, it does. What do you
Yeah.
think, like, how are you coming to grips with death? Because that, even in America, that's a really hard topic.
Mm,
And it's sad, and people don't like talk about sad things as often.
mm,
Um, I think too, because a lot of people don't know how to explain it, so best to not talk about it until you get there. Um,
yeah.
but how are you understanding it and coming to understand it?
Uh, it's certainly on my mind a lot more now. It's definitely something that is moved forward from the back of my brain forward. And
Well, it sounds too like your family, you've had some death in your family, so that would also.
yeah, I've had quite a lot of death in the family, and also friends as well. And my best friend Paul, my really great friend in Liverpool, tall Paul, who was lovely, hilarious, eccentric, but a great human being. He died at 53 of cancer. So
Okay.
I miss him, and it was very, very sad when he died, because I just thought, oh God, all the time I was looking forward to sort of seeing Paul into our 60s, 70s, and 80s, and that's not there. Um, and uh, uh, yeah, an old girlfriend's twin sister died when we were in America. We were in Boston. Actually, we were in Harvard, and then we came back. We found out in Harvard, and then we came back to New York and found she at 22, and that was just awful. Fiona, it was lovely, and we've been out for 5 years, and her twin sister, Claire's twin sister, another Claire's twin sister, Fiona, it was just like driving home from holiday, saw some friends, waved, and hit a central reservation and basically broke her neck, and that was it. And it was so sort of gutting to see her in the funeral parlor. But I'm glad I did it, because she was just so not her. It was sort of quite a wake-up call as to what actually happens. The spirit of our spirits, who we are as people, is very much about now, isn't it? You're living now. I mean, a lot of people, I suppose the comfort of having, I suppose the idea that you might go somewhere else is quite it's a fundamental thing that might be very comforting for human beings, to feel that this is not it. This is not. But I think sometimes that can also be an excuse for not embracing death now, so that you really start to understand it, and it helps you to live better, live life better, in a better way. Um, yeah, it's very yeah, it's yeah, it's very, very much on my mind, and I said to a friend the other day, I really want to do a death workshop or something, where we go and talk about it, and
Yeah.
we can, talk about the idea that one day, you, everybody will die, and how that impacts on you, how you feel about that. How it might be nice to get sad about it before it happens, before you start to die, or something happens where you haven't got any time left. Might be nice to I quite like the idea of having a funeral where you're there, so you actually see
Oh
it.
wow.
Because somebody did that in a film, or some people have done it where they just have like a funeral before they die, so they get to say bye to all their friends and everything, and then they don't really have a few. They just have a sort of like, they get cremated or whatever, or they have a little service or whatever. But it's not nobody has to go to that, because I sort of feel like I quite like to just get buried under a tree somewhere, and then everyone have a party, but no. I mean, you can't say nobody be sad, because that's up to them. You can't dictate how people feel about stuff,
Yeah.
um, but it'd be nice if like it wasn't all a big hoo-ha. You just got buried under a new tree or whatever, and off you go, sort of thing.
What
Supply. Sorry.
no, 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 no. I was gonna say, to counter that, what in life right now do you find beautiful that you're like cherishing and you're really, really enjoying?
Oh, well, I love my family. I love my wife and I love my son, and that they give me a lot of joy, because Claire is remarkable. She's been through a lot in her life, and she's embraced it and challenged it and changed and done sort of so much developing and changing herself. So I'm immensely proud of her, but also like just in awe of her sometimes. She's just
Yeah.
incredible. And Zach is just a lovely, lovely boy. He's so kind. He's
Does
just
he
a
run like you
is he
used
what?
to?
Sorry.
Does he run like you used to, down to the rocks and play?
Yeah, he runs a lot. He's a very good runner. Um, but he's a bit of an Xboxer, so he plays on his Xbox. He's a bit of a gamer, but he loves playing football. He's got really good friends that he from school that he has stayed. They've from Diddy all the way through. So he's just got a lot. He's got sort of a lot of empathy, a lot of kindness, a lot of sort of emotional intelligence, which is really lovely. And he doesn't. He's very caring. But he's very funny and he makes me laugh a lot. So he can get me really like crying with laughter if he really pushes keeps pushing stuff. Um, and I think also really love my doing pottery. I'm really doing pottery classes, which I've been
Oh
doing for over a
wow.
year. I love pottery. Um, I made it to Jean recently, because I was saying to my pottery teacher, Carol, I really, really want to make it to Jean. She said, "Oh, right, well, in time." So I tried one about like 6 months ago, and it was a disaster. But anyway, I've tried since, and then I finally made one, and I was really, really proud of it. So
Oh
I made
wow.
loads of bowls for home and cups and things like that. So that's something I love, because that was quite a challenge. That was quite challenging, pottery. I didn't expect pottery to be challenging. I think it's because it's so it's you and the clay, and
Yeah.
you've got nowhere else to hide. And it's about creating, but it's not about expectation. I've realized that I was expecting myself to just sort of make amazing stuff, and when it went wrong, it sort of it really brought me up short, and I had to go with the flow and start to learn to be creative like a young child would be.
Yeah.
Follow something, not worry about the consequences of it, not the consequences, not worry about how it works out. Just follow where the clay takes you. And if it turns out like that, it turns out like that. But not to
Yeah.
judge it, to stop judging yourself. And I think that was the thing that's so difficult with acting, is that you're constantly putting pressure on yourself and being
Mm.
judged, given notes and stuff. And so it's quite, and also you're not really in a very creative, unless you're creating the work yourself, you're not very much in a creative environment, because you're having, there's a director in front, you're following a set story, and they're normally dictating how it goes. So you're not really given much creative license in acting. So pottery felt really like a bit revolutionary, really. Felt a bit in a weird way. It felt great, but it felt really challenging. And I come home and think, oh, I can't do this, it's rubbish. And it was just me sort of butting up against it. I'm butting up against myself, I think. So there's that. And then I'm loving writing the songs, I'm loving playing the guitar. I am. I play football as well still. So I play 2 or 3 times a week, which is lovely. So it keeps me fit. But I normally get sore ankles, so I do Pilates quite a lot, which is great. So I love Pilates. Claire's trained to be a Pilates teacher, so she's doing foundation Pilates, which is a
Oh,
really
is
good.
she teaching you then?
Yes, she teaches me as well, but not all. Sometimes she practices on me. But she's just passed her mat exam, so she's now doing the apparatus. Do you do Pilates at all ever, or have you ever done?
No, I haven't.
So, it's wonderful actually, but I'm not selling it you. I'm just saying it's wonderful. But there's apparatus. The next bit is learning the apparatus. So when she's done that, I think for a year, she'll then have qualified completely. And it's
Oh,
proper. It's sort of proper foundation Pilates. It's holistic. It's about the individual, what the individual
okay.
needs, not set sort of sport Pilates.
I
Really
see.
it's really good. Um, and yeah, so I do that. Yeah, so those things really make me happy, I think. And Liverpool Football Club always makes me happy as well. Uh, add that one at the end.
Is
Yeah,
there a element of nature that you really love?
an element of nature.
Yeah, something in nature that you really enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, I love woods, forests. Um,
Why do
I
you like
love this.
forests?
Yeah, I love the silence of say in Scotland where you'll find the silence is sort of so fundamental that it's got a noise all to itself. It's so quiet. I love that sort of peace, that meditative peace that you can find in a forest or in a wood. I love listening to birds. One of the best things about lockdown, one of the positive things of lockdown was being able to watch the murmuration of birds outside, just sitting outside the back garden, watching the birds murmurate and listening to the bird song, which was really loud. And really, you could hear lots of different bird song that you weren't normally over traffic. They're competing all the time, aren't they? I suppose with traffic and noise that we're all making. But when it's just them, because there were no planes in the sky, there was hardly anyone in cars. Everybody was really in their houses or in their gardens. It was so quiet. It was just wonderful, and you could really hear the birds and watch them. That was just fantastic. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you is there something in your life that you want to do that you haven't done yet?
Mm. I suppose travel a bit more.
Okay.
Um, I think come to the States, maybe go to India. I have been to the States quite a lot. I've been to, well, the Eastern Seaboard, really, to Boston, New York,
Yeah.
Washington. But I'd like to go to other places. I'd like to go to southern states and, and maybe come up to Virginia. I don't know, but come
Yeah.
to different areas of America because, otherwise you get just a sort of a narrow view of, well, it's like New York. It's not. New York is completely different to, say Mississippi, and that. So so it's I think something like that. So you're traveling definitely. Maybe go to India. I think India is one of those places where you just think, yeah, I really would like to see and hear all those incredible sights and sounds.
It's also extremely poor.
It's so poor, and
Yeah.
that's something else, which is like maybe I shouldn't go, but I
I
don't
mean, I
know.
think my husband's brother just got back from India. He went on a
Yeah,
missions trip, and he said it's life-changing to see how poor the swamps are, and that's where people live like all the time.
yeah, yeah. I think that when I was in South America in Brazil in 1990, I did a world tour with a company called Cheap Bajal, and we saw some pretty poor areas of Brazil, favelas, and
Yeah.
you walk through out of a hotel and there's somebody sleeping in a pile of rubbish, and we thought we were dead, and they're just sleeping there. And it's the juxtaposition between extreme wealth and extreme poverty
Yeah.
was sort of very was really quite shocking. And we didn't we worth a bunch of 14 scruffy actors, so we didn't have very much money, but we had more than these people, and I think we just felt. I think we had a good time because we met a lot of people, a lot of poor
Yeah.
people, a lot of people, because we went to see people. We went back streets. We went where we weren't meant to go. We just went. And people were extremely welcoming and really lovely. And considering how little they have, that's astonishing, really. Makes you think I can't really moan about my life too much because I have so much that people, what is wealth? Well, wealth is the happiness that you have or the things that you have. That's wealth. If you have absolutely nothing, you know, you're one of the really unlucky ones, I think. So reminder to self to be more grateful, really.
Yeah. Two more questions for you. This one
Mm.
is, if you were to be an animal, like your
Mm.
personality, what do you think
Mm.
you fit as an animal?
I don't know. I sort of thought maybe I'd be a bear, like a bear cub, rather than a fully grown bear, because I still feel a bit of a child. Um, I know my son loves to wrestle with me, and I'm getting a bit like, oh God,
He's
please.
probably getting to the point where he can beat you though, couldn't he?
Oh, he definitely is. He's very strong now. I'm a weed, but I don't know. I thought maybe, yeah, maybe a bear, but maybe because I quite like to have a little little sleep in the afternoon. Or bears like to sleep.
I love taking naps. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, maybe, or then maybe I sort of like a lion, but not like a lion. It's just a really quite an old lion that just likes lying around and occasionally goes out, but mainly just lies under a tree, um, something like that. Yeah, that's yes. I don't really know. It's a really good question because I don't really. I might have to send you an answer in an email once I've thought about it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And then the last one for you is there somebody that you look up to who's alive right now that you hope to emulate in some ways?
Oh, good question. Wow. Well, I look up to Claire, but in terms of somebody who's like, I think it'd have to be someone I think it'd have to be someone like, who's doing something for the environment, and so I have to think of somebody now, but it would have to be somebody who's putting themselves out to try and change people's view on global warming, I think, because it's so important. I think it would have to be something that I'll have to try and think again. I'll have to send you a name I can't think of anybody, but it would have to be somebody like that, somebody who is almost one of the people who are tying themselves to the tarmac on, in front of a plane, or somebody who's doing something, you know, that is putting themselves in danger, but is actually trying to make people listen.
Yeah,
Um, so an environmentalist, really. Uh, Anybody who is doing that they have they're the sort of heroes of today, really, because we need them more than anyone. We need to listen to them more than anyone else, and on anything else. Um, yeah, sorry, I can't come up with a name though. I can't come
no,
up
no,
with
no, you're good.
one particular person.
To be honest, I'm not really sure there's like someone who is advocating for the environment and that's their sole position. That's not really a thing, I think, is
Mm,
like a
mm.
and a famous name.
Yeah,
So it would make sense that it's hard to think of them because if they are really advocating for that one thing, they probably won't be in the spotlight a lot.
no, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of I mean, I always look backwards. It's funny that because one of my favorite people of all time was William Byrd, because I just can't. I love William Byrd and his music. It's just like, I don't know. I'm almost obsessional about it. I just love the music he created and the line he had to walk between Catholicism and the Church of England because of Queen Elizabeth I. She allowed him to tread that line, but just about. And he was able. He wrote in secret the Latin text in, and then wrote for her for the Church of England, for the Protestant church. So, but he was an extremely brave, but he kept his values, he kept his true faith, and he kept his values and his moral compass intact. And I think was an extraordinary human being. So I think William Byrd would definitely be on the list of people I would like to be a bit like. But I mean, he's quite a tall order because he was living in a really precarious time.
Yeah.
Where one word would, could see you executed or locked up. But yeah, I suppose there's some societies, aren't there, today where that happens. But yeah, so William Byrd, I suppose going backwards, it would be him. And then going forwards, do you know what? There's so many people, and I probably, as soon as we turn this thing off, I'll be like, oh yes, of course, it was so and so. But I think also people people like Aretha Franklin. I mean, like incredible people, Martin Luther King, anybody who's just done something extraordinary with their life and courageous and outside of their own, because it's so difficult, isn't it, to live life. It's difficult living life normally, but then to to then sacrifice everything for something that is so amazing and beautiful. I think someone like that, but I wouldn't have the ability to do that. I just think about maybe one day I could do something half of as good as that would be amazing. But
Well,
I
it
think
sounds
just
like you're doing it in your own life, though.
be a good person. I
Right.
think one thing is one thing you can do, isn't it? Be kind, be and always apologize, and always try your best to follow some sort of moral code, because there's so little of that. I think try and be a good human being in the end, because the world needs that. The world needs people who care, who listen and who care, I think. I'll put my glasses on the other way now because I've gone, there we go. But so
I'm gonna stop this
yes, go on.